So just a little thing to kind of get things, get your brain juices flowing, inshallah, throughout the week. And I hope, inshallah, you guys are taking the opportunity to review your vocabulary, your rules, and practicing it by reading the Quran, inshallah. Ta'ala. A quick recap of what we've covered up until now. Alhamdulillah, we've covered all four components, characteristics, and qualities of the ism. First, we talked about the three types of speech: ism, fi'l, and harf. Then we went into details regarding ism. And what are the signs of ism? There are four major signs that indicate that a word is ism, as opposed to harf, as opposed to fi'l. And the four major signs is that the word is tanween, or alif lam, or ta marbuta, or, now that we learned, being in the state of jar. Because only an ism could be in the grammatical state of jar. Okay? Only an ism could be majroor. So those are the four major signs that indicate that a word is ism. Once you indicate that a word is ism, you now want to quantify what are the characteristics. So you want to know whether it's if it's ma'rifa or nakira, if it's definite or indefinite. Then you want to quantify whether it is mudhakkar, masculine, or mu'annath, feminine. Then you want to quantify what is its plurality. Is it mufrad, which is singular? Is it muthanna, which is dual? Or is it the jam'un, which is plural? And then the plural, if it's plural, then there's four different types of plural. You have the broken plural. Three different types of plural. You have the broken plural, you have the sound masculine plural, or the sound feminine plural. So you have جمع تكسير أو جمع مذكر السالم أو جمع مؤنث السالم. And all those terms are in the book. Okay? Some of the brothers said if we can continue to use some of the Arabic terminology as well, so you become familiar with it, inshallah. So I'll do that as well, inshallah ta'ala, for everyone's benefit. But just know, if you know how it works in the English term, it would be helpful. So these are the three types of plurality. And then once you study that, the last quality of the ism, which is important, is its grammatical state. And we talked about the importance and the reason for the grammatical state, and the steps by which we may analyze the grammatical state. And the steps by which we analyze the grammatical state is, first we see an ism, we recognize that it's an ism, we recognize that it's a single, dual, or plural, we recognize that it's masculine or feminine. And then we say, this ism is either marfu'un in the state of rafa, it is mansubun in the state of nasab, or it's majrurun in the state of jar. And then we say, how do we know that it's in that state? Because it has either a dhamma, or it has ani, or it has una, or atun. Right? Those are the three signs. Those are the many signs that indicate what a word's grammatical state is, based on whether it is a masculine, feminine, or dual, single, dual, plural. Broken plural, sound masculine plural, sound feminine plural. All of those have unique signs that indicates its grammatical state. Then once you identify its sign, then you say, why is it in that grammatical state? And we talked about the major reasons why a word can be in a grammatical state. And the major reasons why a word can be in the state of rafa, or it is called marfu'un, is either because it's the default status, you can say default, because unless there's some other function in the sentence or there's something else acting upon it, it's in the state of rafa, or it's marfu'un. And more specifically, and probably better for us to know, is that subjects of a sentence are in the state of marfu', in the state of rafa. Okay? Then there's nasab. Why is a word mansub? There are 12 different reasons why a word can be mansub. There's 8 different reasons why a word can be rafa'. There's 12 different reasons why a word can be mansub. A good general rule to understand is that any word describing details of a verb, of a fi'l, that word typically takes on the state of mansub. Either because it is the object of the verb, or it is an adverb, it's describing the verb, how it was performed, or it's describing the subject of the verb or the object of the verb, how, in what manner that action was being performed. And we gave the example from Surah Al-Jumu'ah, where the Prophet ﷺ is being described, وَتَرَكُوكَ قَائِمًا, that when the caravan came, many of the companions, they left for the caravan, and while the Prophet was giving khutbah. And so Allah says, وَتَرَكُوكَ, they left you قَائِمًا. قَائِمًا is the word that is mansub. It is in the state of nasab. How do we know that it's in the state of nasab? It has fatha, because it's a single word, single masculine word, and it has a fatha on it. Therefore, we know that it's mansub. And why is it in the state of mansub? Because it is describing the Prophet ﷺ and what manner he was in. He was the object of the verb taraku. He was the object of the verb taraku. So he's describing the Prophet ﷺ that while that verb was happening, you were in this particular state. It's called al-hal. And you'll see that in your list on page 51, I think. Al-hal. Describing the state of the subject or the object of the verb while the verb is occurring. That takes the state of nasb. So these are the major reasons, the major general concepts as to why a word can take a particular grammatical state. The other reasons why is because an agent, and remember we talked about nawasib, the agent acts on that ism. The two most popular agents are inna and kana. And we'll talk about those later. And they have what's known as akhawatuha, that they have sisters, they're called sisters, but they have basically partners that act the same way as inna or act the same way as kana on the ism, but they have different meanings. And we'll learn those in time as well. The other reason why a word will take a grammatical state is because it is attached to another ism, either through these compounds that we'll talk about today, inshallah. Okay? So, inshallah, today we'll learn about al-murakkab or compounds. So, when we talk about ism, initially we talked just about single words. Today, inshallah, we're going to begin the discussion on putting two ism together, putting two words together, and how they can be related. When we talk about compounds, there are two general categories. Compounds are also known as al-murakkab. 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 Okay? Compounds. Also known as compounds. And this is really not a technical term. It's just a made-up term. Okay? So we just say compounds because when you put two parts together, it becomes a compound. But a better way to describe al-murakkab is putting two words together. You have what is known as two parts, two different types of murakkab. You have what's known as al-murakkab al-tam. Al-tam. Al-murakkab al-tam. Al-tam. Also known as a complete sentence. This is easy because it's a complete sentence. So anything that is a complete sentence is called al-murakkab al-tam. Complete sentence. Okay? The second type of compound that exists is al-murakkab al-naqis. Naqis means there's something deficient. So essentially it's the opposite, right? What's the opposite of a complete sentence? Anybody? An incomplete sentence, right? So then you have al-murakkab al-naqis. Al-murakkab al-naqis. This is noon, alif, qaf, and sa. Al-naqis. Okay? Which means incomplete sentence. Incomplete sentence. Another way of the way that I like to describe al-murakkab al-naqis is a phrase. Okay? A phrase. A phrase doesn't have a complete sentence. So an English example of, a complete sentence is, the boy is tall, right? The boy is tall. And an English counterpart for an incomplete sentence using similar words is the tall boy. Right? What makes a sentence complete? What makes a sentence incomplete? Does anyone want to give it a shot? What's the difference between this and that? What makes this complete and that incomplete? Go ahead.
Is.
So describe it a little bit more. Besides the is. The is, of course, will identify it complete. Go ahead.
Does that have a verb?
I'm sorry?
Does that have a verb?
Neither of these have verbs, so you wouldn't that wouldn't distinguish between the two of them.
Has a subject.
I'm sorry?
Has a subject in that.
This one has a subject, and what else does it have?
Object.
Description.
Object is for more if you have a verb. There's no verb in here. Predicate. That's correct. This has a subject. The boy is tall. is tall. This is the predicate, meaning you have a subject and then you have details, a description of that subject that is complete. That makes sense. If you stop there, it makes sense. But this one is just the subject. The tall boy, the boy is the subject. Tall is just describing the subject. There is no predicate to this. There's no completion of the sentence, meaning if I say the tall boy, and you're like, okay, what else? That means it's not complete yet. If I just say the tall boy, and I stopped, you would be like, okay, what else? You're going to be still listening for more information. But if I say the boy is tall, the information is complete. So that's what distinguishes between al-murakkab al-tam and al-murakkab al-naqis, a complete sentence and an incomplete sentence. So the equivalent of this in Arabic would be al-waladu tawilun. Al-waladu, just for completion, for your own help. طويل I'm sorry. طويل right? الولد طويل. See, there's this is in here that can identify what makes a complete sentence and what doesn't make a complete sentence. But as we said before, in the Arabic language, there is no word is, right, to be used in a sentence. So you have to be able to identify the difference between al-waladu tawilun and al-waladu al-tawilu. Al-tawilu. Okay? See, there's only two differences in these words that makes this complete and this incomplete. What's the differences? Number one is, as Justin brought out in the emails, if you guys saw, he was asking why those examples, some of them don't match in all the 4 characteristics. That's because those examples were actually complete sentences. But rather, when this is a compound, and this is an incomplete sentence. This is a phrase. Al-waladu al-tawilu, the tall boy. This is the equivalent of this, the tall boy. But this is the equivalent of the boy is tall. Al-waladu tawilun. So to be able to recognize these differences is critical for meaning. So today, inshallah, our focus is going to be on al-murakkab al-naqis. Because if you're able, the only way you can tell between al-murakkab al-tam and al-murakkab al-naqis is being able to exhaust, or be able to recognize what is considered a phrase, and then once the phrases are complete, then you know that the sentence is complete. In other words, as I've said before, when you have 2 different types of sentences. You have what's known as the nominal sentence, meaning a sentence that begins with a noun in Arabic, and a sentence that begins with a verb. It's called a verbal sentence, or a jumla fi'liya. In order to recognize how to translate, where to put the is from that nominal sentence, you need to be able to recognize all the phrases or all the incomplete sentences that are in the beginning. When they're exhausted, once they're exhausted, everything beyond that is the predicate. So the is placed in between the subject and the predicate. And we'll learn that inshallah as we go through sentences later on, okay? But today the focus is going to be on al-murakkab al-naqis. So feel free to write this down inshallah. And as you're writing that down, there are over a dozen compounds, a dozen phrases or incomplete sentences for us to learn in time. In this course, the 2 most popular, the 2 most common compounds, and we saw it already when we went through the Quran over the last few weeks, the 2 most common phrases for us to learn are phrases of description and phrases of possession. Okay? The tall boy is a phrase of description, an adjectival compound, or adjectival phrase. And the book of Allah, Kitabullah, is a phrase of possession. How do you say that this ism is possessed or owned by another ism? So this is what's known as possessive compound. The third major compound that we'll learn inshallah is called al-huruf al-jar. Huruf al-jar. Okay? So inshallah we'll talk about those 3 over the next 2 weeks. So today we're going to cover these 2 compounds, In the next class, inshallah, we'll cover huruf al-jar. And those three will be the most bang for your buck. If you know those three, inshallah, you're going to get a lot. Because those are the most common in any book, and especially in the Quran and Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So go ahead and write this down, inshallah. And we'll go ahead and start with chapter 13, which is a chapter on descriptive compounds, or descriptive phrases, or al-murakkab al-tawsifi. Everyone have this down? Today, inshallah, we'll cover 2 of those 6 major compounds, and 3 most common are what I mentioned before. The next class will be the 3rd most common. And even if you stop there, you can start reading the book very easily, inshallah, and also understand the Quran better. Al-murakkabu. I'm not going to put in the tashkil, okay, because we've written them down before. Al-tawsifi. Tawsifi. And even the title itself is an adjectival compound. Al-murakkab tawsifi, also known as, I'm just going to put adjectives. Okay, adjectival compounds. Okay, chapter 13 of the book. So, in order to understand al-murakkab al-tawsifi, as I mentioned before, there are 2 components to the word. So, the tall boy, as I mentioned here, I'll re-illustrate it. The tall boy. This is 3 words. As we know, alif lam replaces the. Okay, the word the is actually letters in the Arabic language. So these 3 words is actually just 2 words. And the way that you identify al-murakkab al-tawsifi is that the 2 nouns match in all 4 qualities of the ism. And we've talked about this before, so it won't take too much of your time. Just to solidify it. Number 1, they match in definiteness. So they match. Okay? In definiteness. So definiteness. Number 2, gender. Number 3, plurality. And number 4, grammatical state. Okay, okay? So, to make al-waladu, we know al-waladu is boy. Al-waladu. And the difference between al-waladu and then al-tawil. Al-waladu, al-tawil. There's a few fundamental differences to understand between the English and Arabic, as you can tell already. Number 1 is that there's 2 parts. There's what's known as al-mawsuf, and what's known as the sifa. The sifa is the adjective, right? So as-sifa. So al-mawsuf is the ism that's being described, and the sifa is the adjective, or the thing that's describing. And the fundamental difference between the Arabic and the English is that it's flipped. The sifa comes first in English, and the mawsuf comes second. Or rather, in Arabic, the mawsuf comes first, and the sifa comes second. That's a very important point. So in this case, this is the sifa, and this is the mawsuf. Okay? So if you recognize those two important things, in English, the adjective comes before the thing that's being described. In Arabic, the thing that's being described is first, the adjective comes after it. And then the adjective needs or the sifa. So you may not, I won't necessarily ask you what's the mawsuf, but you need to know what the sifa is, okay? And you need to know what's being described. So I'll say what's the adjective or what's the sifa, and then what's the thing that's being described. So the sifa comes after the word that's being described, and it matches in all these four things. So this is ma'rifah, or definite. This is ma'rifah, definite, the alif lam. This is gender, mudhakkar, masculine. This is mudhakkar, masculine. This is single, mufrad. This is single, mufrad. And this is marfu'un. This is marfu'un. So this is matched in all four qualities. Therefore, it fits what's known as the adjective compound, or al-murakkab al-tawsifi. Okay? So go ahead and write this down, inshallah, and then I'll show you some other examples, inshallah, and why it's important to recognize that this is a compound, and then where to put the is in a sentence. So, as you can see in this example, you can have this very long, elaborate sentence. And you need to know, okay, where do I put the is? How do I translate this? So, I'm just going to translate the English words. Al-waladu, at-tawilu. We know this part. But the adjectives describing al-waladu continue. Al-waladu, at-tawilu, al-kabiru. Kabiru means big. Al-kabiru, as-saminu means fat. Saminu. Al-kabiru, as-saminu, al-jam'anu means hungry. Right? So you say the tall, big, fat, hungry boy, Sadiqi, it's my friend. Is my friend. So how do you know where to put is? You know where to put is because the adjectives stop right here. Does that make sense? So al-waladu, al-tawil, it matches this. Al-kabiru matches this in all four qualities. Al-saminu matches this. Al-jaw'an matches this in all four qualities. Then sadiqi, you're like, okay, this is different because there's no alif lam. Then this is the biggest thing. There's no alif lam that kind of turns it into, now it turns into a different word. Okay? So this is no longer describing. It doesn't look the same as all these other ones, as you can see. So that's when the adjectives all stop, then you say is my friend. Or you can even say something that's even, let me put it something a little bit easier. Another way to do it is you can also put Rahim. This is a little bit better. This is a better example. So this is like Sadiq is kind of like difficult because you haven't learned that stuff yet. Rahim. Right? Merciful. So you're going to say he is merciful. So, same thing. Al-waladu, al-tawilu, al-kabiru, al-saminu, al-jaw'anu, rahimun. But you just wanted to make sure, like, you know that boy over there who's big and tall and hungry and fat? He's merciful, right? So you just want to say, you want to describe that person, and then when you stop, then rahimun. And you see that rahimun is nakira.
It should not be alif lam here because it's also one of the first and also it's rahim.
Yeah, but the point is that the fact there is no alif lam here means that the adjectives have stopped, and now this is the predicate. This is, now you put is rahimun. He is merciful. But if I put alif lam here, if it was alif lam, it would turn into ma'rifah. So, and then this would become, right, rahimun. So then it would be the tall, big, fat, hungry, and merciful boy. But there's no, it's not complete yet. There is no is something yet. The way you know where to put is when all the adjectives have stopped, and then the next word no longer matches with the adjectives. So in the original example, rahimun, it matches in ma'rifah, it matches in mufrad, and it matches in mudhakkar. But, I'm sorry, it matches in singularity, it matches in grammatical state, and it matches in gender. But guess what? It doesn't match in definiteness. And because it doesn't match in definiteness, originally, it can't be an adjective. It needs to match in all four qualities to be an adjective. And the moment you find an ism, the moment you find a word that does not match it in all those qualities, it does not combine with the subject has stopped, the description has stopped, and the explanation, the is put there, and then the rest of the sentence continues. Does that make sense? So, rahimun. So he's merciful. Rahimun is merciful. That's a better example than Sadiq because this is a little bit more difficult. Okay? So you can keep that there, but the better example is this one. Rahim, merciful. Is merciful. And you know where to put is when the compounds have stopped. So that's very important. So you can make the most longest sentence ever. But if all the words that follow, they're all describing walad. This is the mawsuf. These are all sifa. Okay? And the rahimun is what's known as the khabar, or the predicate. Okay? And we'll study this a little bit more when we go into sentences. So that's that, inshallah. Go ahead and write that down. So that's everything we need to know about Murakkab al-Tawsifi. It's that simple. Alhamdulillah. Now we have al-Murakkab al-Idafi. Al-Murakkab, right? Al-Idafa, Idafi. Al-Idafi. Also known as possession. Okay, it's one word, possession, or possessive compound. Possession. In English, the way you say that a word belongs to another word, so the common example that I've given you guys repeatedly, and just for the sake of repetition, the book of Allah. So you say Allah's book. Allah, book. The way you tell possession in English is that you put an apostrophe S, right? Allah's book. Right? The apostrophe S indicates that Allah is the possessor, and book is the thing that's being possessed. For purposes of Arabic, it's better for us to do the other form of this, as I've said. The other way you can say this is the book of Allah. And the reason why this is better is because this will fit the order that you find in Arabic, the book of Allah. Because in Arabic, the counterpart, you can translate it either way, but the counterpart for both of these terms is Kitabu, Kitabu Allahi. Allahi. Kitabu Allahi. So the thing that's being possessed is the book. So the book comes first in English here in this example, and the book comes first also first. So the thing that's being possessed in Arabic, it comes first. Forgot the term. I'm forgetting the term for some reason. Yeah, mudaf. So the thing that is being possessed is called mudaf. The term for this is mudaf. Mudaf, mudafun. And the thing that it belongs to, mudafun ilay. Mudafun. Mudafun ilay. To it. To it belongs. Ilay. Ilay. Okay? So mudaf. Mudafun ilay, Kitab Allahi. And there's some uniquenesses about this compound. What are the things, how is it that you may recognize that these two words indicate that Allah is the possessor and Kitab is the thing that's being possessed? So the unique thing about these words, and I'll write it up here in a little bit smaller print, is what are the rules? So the rules is the mudaf, so there is no alif lam and no tanween. Tanween are the double letters, right? Un, in, an, for the mudaf. Mudaf. Did everyone read that, or should I erase this and write it bigger? It's fine? So there's no alif lam and no tanween for the mudaf. There's no alif lam, there's no tanween. Okay? Once you recognize that a word, you're like, oh, this word has no tanween, this word has no alif lam, there's something going on here. Once you recognize that, now you're kind of like getting suspicious. Then if you look after it, the mudaf ilay, if it matches this rule, what do you think the rule is? Remember we studied it before. The mudaf ilay is in the state of jar. The mudaf ilay is majroor. Remember, there's only two reasons why a word can be majroor. This is one of them. So if you see two words together, one word does not have alif lam or tanween, there's a single letter here, and the second word that follows it is in the state of jar, then you have what's known as a possessive compound. And the mudafun ilayhi, you know, is majroor, and the mudafun ilayhi, you know, is going to have these two rules. These are the only two rules that need to be required for a word to have to be in a possessive compound. So whenever you see two ism together like this, you know that the first word is being possessed, and the second word is the possessor, or the mudafun ilayh. And therefore you describe it as the blank of blank. The blank of blank. The book of Allah. And that's how you describe it, that's how you do it. What's important to note is that this word could be a or e too, depending on what happens before it. Depending on what happens before it. So this can change its i'rab. This can change its grammatical state. But this is always majroor. Okay? So you can say fi kitab billahi. But the rules, these are the only rules that change. There's no alif lam and there's no tanween. But you can say fi kitabillahi, in the book of Allah. Because fi turns the word after it into jar. So this word can take jar, it can take nasab, it can take rafa. But this word is always majroor. Allahi will always be majroor. Okay? So this is important, inshallah. Any questions? So if there are no questions, inshallah, we can take a 5-minute break. And then basically, go ahead.
So right now is Kitabullah. We are talking about Allah. So that's the state of Jah.
Yeah.
So it means any word after this one will be state of Jah.
Correct. And you'll see that in examples that we go through, inshallah. Any word. This is Allahi is the example here. But you can say Qalam al-Ustadi. Qalamu al-Ustadi. The pen of the teacher. Or qalam al-mu'allimi, is what you guys have learned. Qalamu al-mu'allimi. Hada, this, al-qalamu, this, hada, qalamu al-mu'allimi. This is the pen of the teacher. And we'll go through examples, inshallah. So any word that comes after, any word that anytime you see these two words that look like this, then you know that it's a possessive compound, inshallah. It's just a matter after that of translating those words. Looking them up in a dictionary, because now you know how to put them together. All the the book of these two things are not there, but you know you can translate it that way. All you need to know is that Kitab means book and Allah means the God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So go ahead and take a 5-minute break, inshallah, and we'll go through practice items. So, just one quick thing that's mentioned in the end of the chapter on Idafa, you have page 76. You have a list of words here called Dhuruf Zaman wal Makan. There's some special rules about Dhuruf Zaman wal Makan, but the important thing to know about those words right now, I think you'll cover more when we cover Huruf al-Jar. The important thing to know about these words right now is their meaning, first of all. So you know qabla means before, ba'da means after, tahta means under, fawqa means above. These words indicate space or time. So qablu could be also before, like physically, or before time-wise. So istayqadtu qabla al-fajr. I woke up before fajr, right? Qabla could be that, or I could say ana aqumu qabla al-imam. I am standing before the imam. But it's better to use, it's usually used in the sense of time. So qabla means before. So qabla, wara'a, bayna, these words, you need to know their meaning. But you also need to know that they function similar to mudaf. Okay? So the word that comes after it is mudaf ilayh. So qabla al-fajr. Qabla al-fajr. So the word that comes after these dhuruf, they're called dhuruf. They're a special type of ism. Okay? They're a special type of ism because they have special rules of grammar. But now they're always used with a mudaf ilayh. So there's always going to be a word that comes after it. And this is also, just keep it, this is the mudaf ilayh. Okay? Okay? So, but this, if you call it dharf. Dharf zaman. Dharf zaman. Okay? And there's a few rules about dharf zaman. Number one, if there's no harf jar before it, if no harf jar before it, it is mansoob. Okay? Mansoob. So as you can tell, there's no harf jar before this. Right? The word I'll just put the sentence together. Istayqadtu, it means I woke up, right? Past tense. I woke up. There's one word, it has three words here in English. Istayqadtu qabla, before. Fajr, okay? So there is no harf jar before it. So it takes mansoob. Because qabla, remember we talked about the 12 different types of reasons for mansoob or nasab. If you go back to page 51 is your reference. Number one of them is called maf'ulun fi. Maf'ulun fi is 3. Maf'ulun fi is number 3. Maf'ulun fi is dhuruf or maf'ulun fi. Another way to call it dharf is called maf'ulun fi. Because qabla is describing the verb. Remember, go back to our golden rule. Qabla is describing the time in which the verb happened. So, istayqadtu qabla al-fajr. Okay? Istayqadtu qabla, this word is a time in which this verb happened. Because it's describing that, it takes the state of nasab. Does that make sense? So, if there's no harf jar before it, it's going to be mansoob. The second rule is, if it does have a harf jar before it, then it takes the state of jar. Okay? So you can say min qabl al-fajr. Istayqadtu from before fajr. So if it does have harf jar, if positive, harf, I'm just going to write it in English now, harf jar, then it is majroor. Okay? Majroor. Okay? It becomes jar. So istayqadtu min qablil. Min from before. Qablil fajr. Min qablil fajr. Those are two rules. And I'm going to have another rule that is going to be our question of the week. Because sometimes you'll say min qablu. Why is it min qablu? That's going to be our question of the week. Right? But don't worry about that today. So, istayqadtu qabla al-fajr or istayqadtu min qabla al-fajr. So those are the two major rules you need to know. The third rule is what happens when, why do you see it qablu? When do you see it qablu? And then we'll talk about that later. Okay? So if everyone can turn, any questions regarding that? So those words on page 71, I think it was, 70 something. Those words on page 76, know their meaning, because this is going to be important. تحت, فوق, إمام, قبل, بعد, وراء, من وراء ظهر. From behind their backs. بعد, وراء, بين. بين means between. حول means around. Inda means like to possess something. So you can say in this one of the quick things, if you go to the Arab world, you can say هل عندك هذا. Do you have? Is it within you? Do you have possession of something? So if you say, you want to say, I want to, هل عندك كتابا? Do you have a book? عندك. عند means to possess something, or it says near here, but it means within or to have. Okay? Or عند. So near is not really a good translation, but it could be one of the many translations. And you could also say هل لديك. Lada, the word lada, or from, to with, to be with you. Do you have this? So هل لديك كتاب. So these are words that are important for means time or place. Go ahead.
We also use ala for above.
Yes. Ala is actually one of the huruf al-jar. It's not a dharf. Ala means upon, but it doesn't mean. But it's a special. It's a harf al-dharf. Yeah. Harf al-jar. I'm sorry. So it's not from the huruf. It's actually a harf. It's not an ism. The difference between those two is that it doesn't have the rules of. It's not a special ism, but it's a harf. Okay. So there's just some. They have similar meanings, but they act differently and there are different rules regarding it. Yep. So that's that, inshallah. Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Let's go ahead and look at some of the examples of murakkab on page 70. So if you guys can see an example for a tawsifi, you have kitabun mubinun. Kitabun mubinun. Everyone's on page 70? So kitabun mubinun. Mubin is the word that's describing kitab. So you have kitabun mubinun. If you want to make it definite, you can say al-kitabu al-mubinu. Okay? So it's matching in all four characteristics. Al-kitab al-mubin. I just did that. Now we're going to dual. Al-kitabani al-mubinani. The two clear books. But if the kitabani becomes al-kitabaini, what's going to be, how do you describe al-kitabaini? Al-mubinaini. So you want to know, the grammatical state must match with it as well. Al-kutubu al-mubina. Now it becomes important. Why? We need to know why. Inanimate plural objects act like single feminine objects. Because when you describe plural inanimate objects, you describe them with words that are single feminine. So you have al-kutubu al-mubina. Al-mubina. So al-kutubu, male or female? Male. Definite or indefinite? Definite. Single, dual, or plural?
Single.
Who says single? Raise your hand if you say single. Raise your hand if you say plural. So remember, broken plurals, it's hard to tell whether they're broken plural or if they're single. Remember? So the only way you know is by practice. So I'm telling you in by experience, kutub is plural of kitab. So kutub is books. Okay? But the only way you can tell that is if you knew the meaning and if you've seen it before. So it's okay if you haven't. I mean, you've only seen it maybe like twice. So kutub is the plural of kitab. And it's hard to tell between a broken plural and a single. Okay? So kutubu is plural.
Kitabain is not right? Or is it true? Kitabin.
No, kitabin would be sound masculine plural. And that's for human objects. It's only human beings who are being described, like Muslim. So Muslimin.
But that's not right.
That's not right here, correct. And there's certain patterns that get the sound masculine plural, for example. So al-kutubu is plural, and it is masculine and is definite, and then it is what grammatical state it is in? It is marfu. So now al-mubina, al-mubinatu, definite or indefinite? Definite. Single or dual or plural? Single. It is single. Masculine or feminine? Feminine, because it's al-buta. Then what is its grammatical state? Marfu'a. Some of us may say, well, this doesn't match because it's a single feminine. But that's a broken plural. But remember, know the rule that inanimate objects are always described as single feminine. Okay? They act like single feminine. So therefore, this is an adjective. This fulfills the rules of adjectival compounds. Does that make sense? Okay. Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. Muslimun salihun, a righteous believer. Muslimuna, as Uncle said, Muslimuna salihuna. So salihuna is now also sound masculine plural. It needs to match Muslimuna. Okay? Now the female version. Ayatun mubinatun. Ayatun mubinatun. Or if you stop there, ayatun mubina. Right? That's how you pronounce it. Ayatun mubinatun. A clear verse. Al-ayatu al-mubinatu. Al-ayatani al-mubinatani. Al-ayatu. So now the plural of ayah is ayat. Okay? Sound, feminine, plural. Because it has a special rules for that. Then al-mubina. But it doesn't matter what it is. If you know that it's inanimate and it's plural, whether it's sound masculine plural, sound feminine plural, broken plural, it doesn't matter. It is a plural of an inanimate object, of a non-human object. Therefore, it will always act as a single feminine. Does that make sense? So al-ayatu al-mubina. Instead of al-mubinat, right? It's al-mubina. Because the single feminine word will describe plural inanimate objects. Muslimatu salihah. Muslimatun salihatun. The difference now between al-muslimat and al-ayat is muslimat is human beings. It's animate objects. It has life. It has life. Therefore, it's animate. Therefore, its description is no longer single feminine. This description is sound feminine plural. Does that make sense? Excellent. Alhamdulillah. Now the examples of nasab are there. Musliman salihan, muslimatan salihatan, muslimaini salihaini, muslimataini salihataini, muslimina salihina, muslimatin salihatin. You see how they're matching? Excellent. And now we have the Quranic vocabulary, and these are really important because we'll see these a lot in the Quran, these body parts and relatives. So ummun and abun, zawjun, rajun, imra'atun, waladun, walidun, dhurriyatun. All these are very common in the Quran. There's a very high yield vocabulary here. Ibnun, banun, banun is plural of ibnun, or abna', abna'u is also another plural. Bintun, banatun. Akhun, ikhwatun, or ikhwanun. There's sometimes multiple plurals for a word. So you can see ikhwan or you can see ikhwa. And then ukhtun is akhawat. And then absar, lisanun, alsinatun, qalbun, qulubun, sadrun, sudurun, yadun, aydi. So aydi Allah, or aydi al-mu'mineen, or whatever. Rijulun, arjulun, or rijlun is leg. It's not rajul. It's rijlun, and then arjul is the plural leg. Badanun, maridun, quwwah is strength, marid is sick, salimun is healthy. So qalbun salim is a healthy heart, for example. Okay? Alhamdulillah. Now let's go through the exercises, and we'll start from our rights. We'll start from the back maybe this time. It's usually the same people in the front. We'll start from the back. So brother in the back, what's your name? I'm sorry? Abdul Musawwar, inshallah. So page 71, the question is, in the first box, indicate whether there is an adjective, is there a sifa there or not? Which fulfills all the rules mentioned in class. So, is this an adjectival compound, yes or no? And if yes, explain why. If no, explain why it's not. So go ahead and start, number one. A little bit louder.
It is a compound.
Excellent. It is there is an adjective there because kitabun mubinun. Excellent. Next, brother next to you. Al-kalimatu at-tayyibatu. I'm sorry, louder.
It is.
Okay, excellent. Alhamdulillah. Shahidun nuri. Is this a tawsifi? Shahidu an-nuri.
They don't match in, there's no, basically, the first one, the second word, it has a reclam, but the first one doesn't, so I want to say it's not.
Excellent. It's not. And there's another reason why it's not too. Anyone else? There's two reasons. First is that there's no alif lam, so it's not ma'arifa. The second word is ma'arifa. So, and then what?
It should be shahidun. If there is no...
That's correct. There's no tanween there, so that's another sign that that's incorrect. And then what else? How else are they not matching?
An-nun. It should be a nun.
Exactly, the grammatical state. So the two major reasons why. They're not matching in definiteness and they're not matching in grammatical state. Excellent. Next.
Masjid al-Harami, it doesn't match because first thing is the masjid is nakra, it should be a modified is al-Harami. Second thing is that this is majroor, it should be both are majroor and it doesn't fit.
Excellent. So actually there's only one reason in this case why. It's because the first word should be ma'rifa. It's not matching in definiteness. But they're both majroor. So that if it had an alif lam, it would have been an adjective or compound. So there's no alif lam there's no ma'rifa. Excellent. ذنبان كبيران.
These are both dur
Excellent.
and they're matching.
Excellent. So is it an adjective compound?
That they're
Correct. Alhamdulillah. So they're both marfu'an, they're both dual, they're both dual, etc. So it works well. All four characteristics. They're both nakira, right? There's no alif lam there. Excellent.
القوم الفاسقين.
القوم الفاسقين.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Both
So
are alif lam.
okay, excellent. So they're both definite. That's correct. What about masculine and feminine? Are they both masculine? That's correct.
Yeah.
Are al-qawm single, dual, or plural?
Plural.
Al-qawm is actually mufrad, even though it's talking about a group of people in and of itself. The word itself is still single. Okay? Al-qawm.
So then it should be followed by the singular also if it is in...
Yes. So this is actually...
That's a dual. Fasiqeen is dual.
Fasiqina is plural.
Plural.
It's masculine, plural. Actually, you know what, it may be correct. This is a little bit different. I had to research that a little bit better, inshallah. But you actually may be right. It may actually correct because even though qawm is a single word in and of itself, it's describing a group of people. And because we're describing a group of people, al-fasiqeen is probably correct. But the reason why it's not matching here is because al-qawm is marfu'an and fasiqeen is mansubun. Okay? So al-qawm al-fasiqeen is actually, if it was al-qawm al-fasiqeen, وَعَذَّبَ اللَّهُ الْقَوْمِ الْفَاسِقِينَ, and Allah punished the fasiq, the mischievous nation. It's referring to a qawm, a group of people. So it could be described as a group of people as well. But the reason why it's not matching here, and the reason why it's not an adjective or compound here, is because al-qawmu is marfu'an, and al-fasiqina is the plural mansub. Okay? It's mansub. That was a little bit more complicated. Go ahead. Allah. Actually, let's start with him first, inshallah. Yeah.
Allahu wahidun. It's not matching the modifier.
And how is it not matching?
The
Alif lam? Excellent, inshallah. So wahid is nakira, Allah, lafdul jalala is ma'rifa. So therefore it is not an adjectival compound. Excellent. Next. Rabbun ghafurun.
It's not.
And why is it not? So let's run through it. Rabb, definite or indefinite?
It's definitely
Single, dual, or plural?
single.
Masculine or feminine?
Masculine.
Marfu'un, mansubun, majrurun. Marfu'un.
Marfu'.
Excellent. Alhamdulillah. So now ghafur, definite or indefinite? Masculine or feminine? sorry? Indefinite, I'm sorry. Indefinite. Single, dual, or plural?
Single.
Single. Masculine or feminine? Masculine. مرفوع منصوب مجرور. مرفوع. So don't they match in all four qualities? So therefore it is. Next inshallah. سماوات واسعة.
Not match.
Okay, how so? Okay. Okay. Does anyone agree or disagree with it? This one's a little bit more tricky, which means he's wrong. So number one, samawatin, definite or indefinite? Indefinite. Masculine or feminine? Feminine. Because samawatin, right? Single, dual, or plural? Plural. Particularly sound, feminine plural. Okay? What is its grammatical state? So this is a little bit more tricky because its grammatical state can either be majrur or it could be mansub. We don't have a context here, right? So if we don't have a context, we can assume. Now let's go to the next one. Wasi'atan. Wasi'atan, definite or indefinite? Indefinite. Masculine or feminine? Feminine, right? Single, dual, or plural? Single. Okay? What is its grammatical state? It is mansub. How do we know that? It's a single word and it has fatha on it. So the fatha means it's mansub. So we know that samawat could be mansub or it could be majrur. But the key thing is like, oh, it's not matching in its plurality, right? Samawat is sound feminine plural. Wasi'a is single feminine. But samawat, what's the meaning of samawat? Sky. Is that human or non-human object? Non-human object. Any non-human object acts like a single feminine. So actually this is an adjectival compound. We're assuming that the samawatin is mansub. Okay? So alhamdulillah. Alright. Identify which rule is missing from the construct, thereby making it not worthy of adjectival status. So all of these are not following the rules. Your job is to answer what rule is missing. So next. Allahu wakilun.
The definiteness.
Excellent. The definiteness is not matching. Okay, now we can start from our right over here. Kitabun mubinatun. Would that change it? Would that make it an adjectival compound? So let's go through it. Kitabun, definite or indefinite? Indefinite. What did you say? Indefinite? It's indefinite. Because it's tanween. There's no alif lam. Does that make sense? So indefinite. Masculine or feminine? Masculine, because it doesn't have the signs of femininity. Single, dual, or plural? Excellent. Marfu'an, mansubun, or majrur? Marfu'an. Excellent. So remember those. Now mubinatun. Is it definite or indefinite? Indefinite. So it matches. Okay, number one matches. Masculine or feminine? Feminine. They don't match there. Just for the sake of completion. Single, dual, or plural? Single. And then marfu'an, mansubun, majrur. It's marfu'. So they match in everything except for plurality. Now if it had been kutubun mubinatun, then it would have been good. See, because kutubun is plural, inanimate plural, and it acts like single feminine. So very close.
But why would you say al-kutubun? Kutubun? Mubinatun?
Kutub.
Mubina is singular also, so it should be not kutubun.
Yeah, because but kutub is a non-human plural, and non-human plurals they act like single feminine. Does that make sense? And so inshallah, as we practice more and more, hopefully that concept will be iterated, it will be solidified. Excellent. Next. As-salihuna al-karim. So specifically what? The ending? How should the ending be if you think it would be correct? Al-Karimuna, right? So since it's not Al-Karimuna, it is not correct. So As-Salihuna, definite, masculine, sound masculine plural, marfu'un, because it's una, not ina. Al-Karimu, definite, masculine, singular. Marfu'un still. So it doesn't match in its plurality. It's not matching in its plurality. It should be plural, but it's not plural. As a result of that, it doesn't match. It's not an adjective. Go ahead, Justin. Aliman. Aliman, no. So because it does not match in its what? Grammatical state. It is not an adjective. So adaban is nakira, okay, indefinite, mudhakkar, masculine, mufrad, singular, mansub. In the state of nasr. Aliman, aliman, nakira, mudhakkar, mufrad, majrur. And because it does not match in its grammatical state, it's not an adjective. Excellent. Exactly. Adaban, aliman. Right? We hear that a lot in the Quran. Next. Al-Muslimatun as-Salihuna.
Why is al and Muslimatun both together?
Barakallahu fi. Al-Muslimatun, al-Muslimatu. Sorry. Al-Muslimatu. That's an error. Al-Muslimatu as-Salihuna.
So the first one is.
It's actually as-Salih. It should be as-Salihuna. It's spelled as as-Salihuna. That's not even a word. As-Salihuna. So if you want to write down the correction, okay? Al-Muslimatu as-Salihuna.
They actually both plurals.
Okay? Both are plurals.
So one of them is feminine, the other one is masculine.
Excellent. So they're both definite. They're both plural. They're both in the state of rafa'. They're both marfu'an. The thing that does not match is gender. So it should be what? As-Salihatu. As-Salihatu. Okay. Next. Shamsun kabirun. This is a trick one. Trick question.
You're all matching to me.
Anyone want to say what's going on here?
That's
Yeah, you just need to memorize that shams is a feminine word. Remember, there are certain words that are feminine, so it's kind of a trick question, but it's there to kind of remind you of that. So it's actually incorrect because of the femininity. Shams should be described in feminine terms, so it should be shamsun kabira. Excellent, alhamdulillah. But you would have gotten it right if it had that. Next, inshallah. Nafsun khabithun.
They're both not definite, they're both There's also a gender thing?
Yeah, there you go. It is a gender thing. Same thing, nafs is also described in feminine terms. Alhamdulillah. Ash-shaytanu rajimun.
Should be a shaitan. Ar-Rajim.
Ar-rajim. Excellent. So they're not matching in definiteness. Sister, would you like to try? Sure. So katibun salihuna. Excellent. It's in plurality. So what would make it correct? So how would you say salihun? How would you describe righteousness for a katib? Katibun salihun. Excellent. All right, back to the back. Fi laylin mubarakatun. So first of all, what's the word being described? What's the what's the mawsuf? Layl. Excellent. Okay, what's the sifa? Mubarakah. So how is the sifa not matching with the mawsuf?
Gender in this way?
Okay, so layl, definite or indefinite?
Grammatic state.
Indefinite. مذكر أو مؤنث? Male, masculine or feminine? Sorry? There you go. It's one of the unique words that it is feminine. That's a trick. Now it's a trick question again. Single, dual, or plural? Single. مرفوع, منصوب, or مجرور? مجرور. Excellent. مباركة. Definite or indefinite? Indefinite. مذكر or مؤنث? Masculine or feminine? Feminine. So it's still matching because layl is actually a feminine word. So that if you thought that that was the reason why it didn't match, that's not the reason why. There's still a reason why it doesn't match though. Single, dual, or plural? Single. What's the grammatical state?
Grammatical state is not matched.
Marfu'an. So laylan is majrurun and mubarakah is marfu'an. So it is not matching because of its grammatical state, not because of its gender. Those are just trick questions, but they're fun nonetheless.
You should be mubarakatin, right?
I'm sorry?
You should be mubarakatin.
It should be mubarakatin, correct.
So, what is the translation for this phrase?
So fi, it means in, laylin, the night or a night. Mubarakatin is a blessed night.
So
Blessing.
None of this is definite, so it's all A.
Yeah, a. But if it was fi laylatil mubarakati, it would be in the blessed night.
This is in a blessed.
In a blessed night, that's correct. MashaAllah.
Fi means in.
And fi is in, that's correct. Bismillahi ar-Rahmanin. I'm sorry, Bismillahi Rahmanin.
Rahman should be Rahman.
Rahman, what?
Bismillah, Rahman.
Ar-Rahmani.
Ar-Rahman.
I didn't hear you. So
Should be,
spell that out for me.
should be Bismillah, Rahman, not Nin.
That's correct. There should be an alif lam, and then there should be, so basically it should be ma'rifa, it should not be nakira. It should be definite, not indefinite. So it should be Bismillahi ar-Rahmani. But of course together it's Bismillah ar-Rahmani. Excellent. Ajrun kathiratun. Excellent. So it does not match in its gender. So it should be ajrun kathir. Okay, alhamdulillah. Alright, now we're getting into Surah Yasin. And what we'd like to do is I want you all to get in groups, inshallah. So get in groups of 3, the brothers. Sister, inshallah, you can work on this on your own. You'll be a group in and of yourself, alhamdulillah. And just like Ibrahim was, he was a nation. Inshallah, you're a nation of the sisters here, inshallah. So get in groups of 2 or 3, and I want you guys to circle your adjectival compounds, and we'll go around, and I want you guys to, inshallah, we'll try to go ayah by ayah. So go ahead and start that, inshallah. And keep in mind one thing, as we saw last week, you can have two compounds functioning together. So, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, Rabbil Alameen. Rabbil Alameen is, Rabbi is actually describing Allah, but it is also the mudaf of Al-Alameen. So keep that in mind. So keep in mind the word can both be a mudaf, and it can also be a sifa. A lot of groups. Okay, inshallah. All right, I'll just start here, then we'll kind of tell me what the group is. Okay, first group, inshallah, over here. The first line, so those multiple ayat. So we'll start with Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So you tell me if there is an adjectival compound there, and what are the adjectival? Yes. Okay, you want to start from Yasin? So Yasin, okay, doesn't count. وَالْقُرْآنِ الْحَكِيمِ إِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ عَلَى صِرَاطٍ مُسْتَقِيمٍ. So tell me if there are any. What I'd like to do actually is go word by word, and then you tell me, inshallah, and you'll learn the adjectival compound as we do this. So you'll see what I'm talking about. So what? Ism fi'l harf. What? Harf. Okay. Al-Qur'ani. Ism fi'l harf. I'm just going to ask you, what is its grammatical state, okay? Al-Qur'ani, what is its grammatical state? Majroor. Do you know why it's majroor? I'm sorry? That's what indicates it. How do you know it's majroor? Because of the kasra. Why is it majroor? There's only two reasons why a word can be majroor. It's because what is actually as a harf al-jar. It's one of the harf al-jar. It's a special type of harf al-jar. It's called harf al-qasr. It's a harf of swearing. So when you say wallahi, wallahi means I swear by Allah. So when Allah says in the Quran, He swears by things. So wal Qur'ani, Allah swearing by the Quran. Al-Hakim, ism fi'l harf. So what is its grammatical state? Majroor. How do you know that it's majroor? Kasra. Why is it majroor? So you guys are a group, so you guys should have the same answer. Oh, you guys are together? Okay. So why is it majroor?
It's like it's possessive.
It's not possessive, but it is a sifa of Quran. Okay? Because it's sifa of Quran, it needs to match in all qualities. So it's matching indefiniteness, singular, masculine, and it is also majroor. So Al-Hakim is describing the Quran. So we say, "Wal Quran al-Hakim," actually the way you translate it is, by the wise, the very wise Quran. Al-Quran al-Hakim. So it said, "Wal Quran," by the Quran, that is wise. You can say that, but it's actually by the wise Quran. Al-Hakim is very wise. So, wal Quran al-Hakim. So everyone got that? Okay. Innaka, we know is a special harf. Lamina, lam here is lam al-tawkeed, means like indeed. So inna means indeed, la means indeed. So innaka, indeed you, lamina al-mursaleen, al-mursalina. So obviously there's no true ism here. So there's no adjectival compound here. And we're still in the same group right here, by the way. Ala siratin mustaqim. Ala is harf al-jar. Sirat is ism. What is the grammatical state of sirat? Ya Mawlana. Majroor. How do you know that it's majroor? Kasra. Why is it majroor? Because it follows the harf al-jar. Excellent. Mustaqim. What is its grammatical state?
Majroor.
How do you know it? Kasra. Why is it majroor? This group right here. This group right here. We'll get to you, brother. You'll get your chance to shine.
Why is it majroor?
I'm sorry?
So you said why is it majroor?
Why is it majroor?
Is it describing?
It is describing sirat. Sirat is being described by mustaqim. How do you know that it's describing? Because look at it. Both of them are nakira. Both of them are singular. Both of them are masculine. And both of them are majroor. So you know that it is. This is majroorun لأنه صفة. صفة مجرور وعلامة جره الكسرة الظاهرة. This is sifa that is majroor, and the sign that indicates that it is majroor is the kasra. Make sense? All right, next group. You two, I'm assuming. You two? Okay. So, where are we? Tanzeel al-Aziz al-Rahim. Tanzeel. Okay. I'm going to skip that because it's a little bit more complicated. Al-Aziz al-Rahim. Al-Azizi. Is it ism, fi'l, or harf?
اسم
Ism. What is its grammatical state?
مجرور
Excellent. Why? How do you know that it's majrur? What sign?
كسرة
Kasra. Why is it majrur?
Is it describing the tanzeel?
Close. We've only learned 2 compounds, so there has to be another reason why it is. It's actually the mudafun ilay, tanzil al-aziz. Tanzil means revelation, or the thing that's descending, the thing that descends. So descending al-aziz. So tanzil is the thing that's being possessed. Mudaf. Al-aziz is the thing that's the possessor. Al-aziz is actually a description of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So tanzil al-aziz rahim. Al-azizi is majrurun because it is mudafun ilay to the mudaf tanzil. And you know tanzil is mudaf. Why? There's no alif lam and there's no tanween. Remember that those are the signs, the 2 rules for mudaf. So tanzil al-aziz. Now why is it tanzil mansoob? That's a different discussion. We're not going to talk about that. Okay? Ar-Rahim. What is its grammatical state?
مجرور
Okay, why is it majrur?
كسرة
Right.
How do you know it's kasra and why is it?
again because of the مضاف تنزيل
It's matching the word before.
I'm sorry?
Is it matching the word
or
before?
it's
Why don't you tell me? You guys are going over this already.
yeah it's a صفة of الأصل
Excellent. It's sifa of al-aziz. Okay? So al-aziz is majroor because it's mudafun ilay. Al-rahim is majroor because it is sifa. So it's good to know these things because when you translate it, now you know that al-aziz is going to be the possessor of tanzil, and then you want to describe al-aziz. So you want to say revelation of the majestic ar-rahim. The revelation of the majestic ar-rahim. The most merciful, majestic one. So that's how you describe, translate it in generic translation. Okay? Tanzil al-Aziz al-Rahim. So al-Aziz is like the primary description. You want to know Allah is al-Aziz, the majestic, the powerful one. And then al-Rahim, the merciful, powerful one. So he has power, but he's also al-Rahim. So he's the merciful, powerful one. This is the revelation of him. So that's how you kind of look at it. Okay, next group. Who is the next group? Raise your hands. All of you guys, mashallah. So, لِتُنذِرَ, this is, again, this is verb. قَوْمًا مَا أُنذِرَ. So there's no, so I'm just going to recite it. You tell me if there's an adjective. Now I'm just going to go, and you tell me if there's an adjective or compound there. Okay? I'm sorry, we're going to stay with you guys for this line. I'm going to go quicker now. So, لِتُنذِرَ قَوْمًا مَا أُنذِرَ آبَاؤُهُمْ فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ. Is there any adjective or compound here?
no yes
Anyone agree? Disagree?
Yes.
Good, alhamdulillah. So there's nothing there.
No,
Okay.
فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ.
I'm sorry?
فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ.
فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ is actually not an adjective or compound.
It is not?
No. فَهُمْ, it is, they are غَافِلُون. They are heedless. So it's actually a sentence.
We thought abawuhum and fahum ghafilun, both are those.
I'm sorry?
We thought abawuhum and ghafilun.
أَبَاؤُهُمْ. So as, okay, so لِتُنذِرَ, to warn, قَوْمًا, a people, مَا أُنذِرَ آبَاؤُهُمْ. What was warned to their fathers? What was warned to their fathers before them? فَهُمْ غَافِلُونَ. But they're heedless. فَهُمْ
We thought
غَافِلُون.
abawuhum is mudaf alayh and ghafilun is safa.
No, I'm talking about adjectival compounds here, not mudaf ilayh. I'm just going to add a mudaf ilayh when it's necessary, but the exercise here is identifying adjectives. Okay? Makes sense? So aba'uhum, yes, that is mudaf ilayh, but you haven't learned that type, because you haven't learned pronouns yet. لقد, so now this group over here. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. Is there any adjectives here? So لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. Excellent. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. Anything? Okay, I'm going to keep going. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. Nothing. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. Alright, so tell me, أجر كريم is adjective or compound. Excellent, mashallah. So the question is, why is أجر مجرور? So it's majroor.
Because of ba is
Excellent. Because of ataf. Go ahead, Faisal. So hold that question for a second. So the reason why it's majroor is because it is a continuation of maghfirah, and you have and. Whenever you have wa, and then another thing, it's called ataf. It connects the thing before, this word with the word before it. So it takes on the same grammatical state as the word before it. Okay? So bi maghfiratin, with maghfirah, forgiveness, wa ajrin kareem, and a reward that is kareem, generous reward. So ajrin kareem, a generous reward. Instead of saying a reward that is generous, a generous reward, because it's describing. It's an adjective. Go ahead, Faisal, your question?
I was saying it's Ar-Rahman bil-Ghayb, right?
Yeah.
So, Ar-Rahman al-Ghayb.
But there's Ar-Rahman and then there's a harf between it. So there's B. And then it doesn't match because even if there was Ar-Rahman al-Ghayb, it would be Mansoob is Ar-Rahman and the Ghayb is actually Majroor. And the reason why it's Majroor is because it follows a harf jar, which is B. Excellent. So we got one. Next group. Are you guys a group in the back? Okay, next group in the back, inshallah. إِنَّا نَحْنُ نُحْيِي الْمَوْتَى وَنَكْتُبُ مَا قَدَّمُوا وَآثَارَهُم. Anything? Good. وَكُلَّ شَيْءٍ أَحْصَيْنَاهُ فِي إِمَامٍ مُبِينٍ. This group over here first. You want to phone a friend? Your neighbors? So Imam Mubin, as these brothers, you can go ahead and tell us. Why is it, what is it? So excellent. So Imam Mubin. Does anyone know the translation of this?
the one who was
Imam Mubin is like a clear leader. So Mubin, Imam Mubin. I don't know if that's the best translation. I have to look at the actual translation. But anyways, Imam Mubin is both adjectives. So Mubin is an adjective of the word Imam. And Imam can have the meaning of leader, but in this context, it's like it's describing the evidence. And Imam Mubin, a clear evidence. So how does Imam translate to evidence? I'm not sure. I have to look into that, inshallah. So fi Imam Mubin. Excellent. So since you guys want to continue, inshallah, we'll finish up with you, and we'll finish up this line with you. وَاضْرِبْ لَهُمْ مَثَلًا أَصْحَابِ الْقَرْيَةِ إِذْ جَاءَهَا الْمُرْسَلُونَ. Anything?
No.
إِذْ أَرْسَلْنَا إِلَيْهِمُ اثْنَيْنِ فَكَذَّبُوهُمَا فَعَزَّزْنَا بِثَالِثٍ فَقَالُوا إِنَّا إِلَيْكُمْ مُرْسَلُونَ.
No.
قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزلنا الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. البلاغ المبين. Excellent. So وما علينا, there is not upon us except al-balaghu, to express. Remember we talked about balagha, to express, al-mubin, express in a clear fashion. So it's not upon us except the clear expression. But really what we're saying here is it's only our responsibility, the messengers that are described here, it's only our responsibility to give a clear expression. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ الْمُبِينُ, a clear expression. Excellent. Sister, inshallah. قَالُوا إِنَّا تَطَيَّرْنَا بِكُمْ. Any adjective or compound here? No. لَإِن لَمْ تَنْتَهُوا لَنَرْجُمَنَّكُمْ وَلِيَمَسَّنَّكُمْ مِنَّا عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Is there an adjective or compound here? Sister. You're not sure? Okay, phone a friend. So this group seems to be the friends. So, you guys said Adabun Ali. MashaAllah. Adab and Alim is matching in all its way. So adab is punishment, Alim is very powerful, horrible, grievous punishment, strong punishment. So adab and Alim is a grievous punishment. You'll see that regularly throughout the Quran. Adabun in a description. Okay? Sister again, inshallah. قالوا طائركم معكم إن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. Anything? وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قوم مسرفون. Excellent, mashallah. You got it. This group is like on top of their game, mashallah. So قوم مسرفون, and this goes back to, remember I was like, oh yeah, قوم is a single word in and of itself, but it's describing a group. And as a result of that, its description will be in jama', and usually jama' madhakar salim, in a sound masculine plural form. So qawmun musrifun is like israf is like corruption and corrupt people. So, but there's a difference between fasid and musrif, and all these words that are translated similarly, but they have different connotations. So that's something that we have to learn more, inshallah, myself as well. So qawmun musrifun is describing qawm. So musrifun is a description of qawm. So it's they're rebellious and deceptive and evil people, a group of people.
So qawmun is singular, right?
It is singular, but it's describing a group, which means nation. Qawm means like a group or a nation of people.
No, the plural of qawm is aqwam, right?
Aqwam, that's correct. So nations, aqwam. And how that would be described is a good question. It would probably be the same way. Aqwam musrifun.
So you can mark it as a compound.
Yes, it is an adjectival compound. Qawmun musrifun. Excellent. Sister, in the last part, inshallah. وَجَاءَ مِنْ أَقْصَى الْمَدِينَةِ رَجُلٌ يَسْعَى قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اتَّبِعُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ. Is there anything there? Okay, good. Alhamdulillah. So you guys, alhamdulillah, did very well. I'm very happy about that, inshallah. And if it was a little bit difficult today, I mean, I'm expecting you to remember stuff that you learned an hour ago. And the point of this is to go, if you get it wrong, alhamdulillah, that's fine. Just look at why you got it wrong and what you can do to make it different, inshallah, next time. And so by going through all of it with everyone, you can see what the thought process was. And if I'm going too fast, please just let me know. If you want to tell me on the side, let's slow down a little bit and just focus on this a little bit more. Don't be shy, because I want everyone to be on the same level, inshallah. And inshallah, it'll take some time. So the assignment first of all, next week I'm working, unfortunately, so we're not going to have class. So there's a few things for assignment. Number one is do the exercises at the end of chapter 14. So the same thing we did with OCP, you're going to do with Ilafi. Being able to recognize why or why not the word is in that compound. And then you're going to go through Surah Al-Imran, the first part of Surah Al-Imran, and being able to recognize that compound, just like we did just now. Inshallah, as soon as I get the chance, I'll send you guys both the assignment answer sheet. I think I did the answer sheet for chapter 9, right? Did I send it? So I'm going to send you guys the answer sheets for these assignments. And also do chapter 12. We skipped over chapter 12. So do chapter 12's exercises, 13 and 14. Read chapter, I think it's 15, which is Hussain. Yeah, read chapter 15 for 2 weeks from now. And then, inshallah, do the next lessons on our online parallel course. And I'll send you guys an email. Does anyone know, we're probably in lesson 5 now, right? For that parallel course. So we're doing 2, whenever we don't have a class, we do 2 of those parallel course lessons, which are about 15 minutes each, half an hour each, so it's an hour of class. During the week, anytime you want, it's an online thing. But it's very helpful, I think, inshallah. So those are the few assignments. Feel free to communicate on email if you have any questions. Call me if you have any questions. I'm sorry, email me if you have any questions. You're welcome to call me too. But email is probably better, because I'm horrible at returning calls. And inshallah, hopefully everyone is benefiting from this. And you really made a tremendous stride here with going into compounds now, as you probably have seen already. Being able to recognize that this is describing a word. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Ar-Rahman Ar-Rahim, Maliki Yawmiddin. All these things are describing Allah, as we talked about last week. So practice, practice, practice. Inshallah, we're going to Huruf Jar, and then we're going to Damirs, and then we're going to get to sentences and verbs. Once we start hitting verbs, it's gonna blow up your understanding, inshallah. I shouldn't say that. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت ونستغفرك ونتوب إليك. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have mercy upon us, to fill our hearts with the love of the Quran. We ask Allah to increase us in our knowledge and understanding of His book, to draw us near to Him and to make us companions of the Quran. اللهم صل على نبينا محمد وبارك وسلم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. بارك الله.